Hi, everybody. Sally Hurst here. I'm going to interview Elise Wagner today, talk about her work and talk about her product, Wagner Collagraphy Wax. Over 10 years ago, when I saw her work online and was intrigued by not only the technique and the method, but the ideas behind it, the abstraction behind it, the interest in texture, all of those things were really ringing bells with me. And so Elise and I had started a conversation, and her work is beautiful. So some of the ones I'm showing you now are very textural, they're very rich. She works by making pieces and a printmaking process that we're going to discuss, and then adhering them to panels and then adding and embellishing them. But they're really fascinating pieces, and she's had a number of really successful shows with them. And she's developed this process of wax collagraphy printmaking. Hi, Elise. Hello. Welcome to the UK, which is having a heat wave at the moment. You are in
Astoria, Oregon.
Oregon. You look out onto the sea, you're on a pier.
Yes.
Absolutely delightful. And the wheel of your press, you must feel that you're steering a ship.
Yeah, I do in some ways. Yes. And the studio in my painting studio actually comes to a kind of a point almost, and there's a bay window that makes it feel even more like a ship. When I was teaching on Zoom, when we first met, I was living in Portland, and then I moved to the Oregon North Coast. And this is out there is that's the Columbia River, and just a few miles down the road there, like over there, that's Washington State. We're in Oregon here, and then it's divided by the Columbia River, and the Columbia dumps into the sea. So it's very active, and it's one of the most dangerous sea passages in the world. Yeah.
I love this symbiosis between printmaking and 2D painting, so to speak. And it's a really, I've always found it intriguing that neither of us are neither printmakers nor painters. We're a kind of just a conglomeration of everything we've learned over the years, and that comes out in your work. So tell us a little bit more about your work.
Yeah, so my work, I started out as as a learning artist. I started out doing painting and drawing and the normal ways that you engage with art. And then I started doing caustic painting and taught myself how to do that in 1993 or 4. And then around 2005, I started experimenting with actually those thin boards that you have in as an option for a substrate. I had these thin boards that I started experimenting with, and it kind of dawned on me. I had started building up this texture in my work that is also a separate development of what I've done. Is I've kind of created this geologic texture with my work and built it up. And one day I was just in my studio and I looked at the painting and I thought, wow, what if I put some pigment stick on there, and then I rolled over it with a rolling pin. So I went into my kitchen and I got a rolling pin, and it was just purely through experimentation and using pigment stick at the time, because that's what I use oils over my encaustic paintings. So they're very layered. They're very related to wonder and science and the combination of the celestial bodies and abstraction, and kind of merged together with color and inspirations I get from living in the Pacific Northwest. And so when I did this experiment, I was with my friend Jane, who's a master printer. I was at this fundraiser, and I thought I had already done it before, but I thought, oh, let's try it with. I had done it with the pigment stick, and it had been successful on a press, and I was pleased. And I thought, well, I don't think it's going to work, but let's just try the oil-based paint, inks with the wax. And I had one of my wood panels. I hadn't even started using the plastic or plexi or acrylic or anything like that. And master printer, always experimental in nature. She took it to the press, and it just made this wonderful fusion of ink and wax and mess. And I realized my background has been when I was putting myself through college, I worked at Gamblin Artist Colors as a color chart painter and labeler. And then I went into working for them in marketing, and I learned a lot about the chemical construct of color and how things are put together. And I learned a lot about inks and how they're made, and they're made with, burnt plate oil, and that was the culprit in my particular instance of this R&D I was on. I was realizing that I was developing a product at that point. And I thought, okay, then I came across the Akua inks and started using those, and they are soy and honey based, and they're not made with the burnt plate oil, and they were just like a charm. And it's excellent. It dries up, and then you can rework it with color pencil, or you can go over it with the wax and it doesn't resist it. At first I thought, oh my gosh, it's like mixing oil and water or something. I thought, oh, I don't know if this is going to work, but that's exactly what you want. You
Yeah.
kind of want that resistance, and it was just part of my learning process of seeing, oh yes, I'm going to veer towards this material because it's very, it's very accommodating for what I was wanting to achieve. And so, but I am going to be teaching a class next year involving pigment stick and
Mm.
uh, and making these small books and
Yeah, I mean the pigment sticks are delights, and there's a lushness, isn't there,
Yes, and
to
they're so soft,
that, and they're beautifully soft. But I
Yeah,
think
they,
with certainly going back to Akua, what I find certainly with calligraphy and heavily textured plates, and we're talking about heavily textured as opposed to a dry point plate or an etching plate, is the Akua travels into all those textures and allows you, it's the right consistency. I don't have to modify it,
yes,
it
yeah,
goes in and you can push it around, and then it lets go and it gets in. And
right,
there's an
right.
awful lot of discussion about oil versus water based and all those things, but they're all different. And the Akua, I love the transparency of some of the colors, which you don't necessarily get with oil based ones, and I love the consistency of them and the easy cleanup.
Yes, the easy
So
cleanup,
so easy to
incredible.
clean up.
Yeah,
So
I mean, you don't have to worry about, if you use your brayers with oils, you have to clean them
yeah,
up, and it's
yeah,
just this mess. And with the Akua, it's just really easy. I just roll my brayers and my brushes over, a phone book and get the excess off, and then so I like some of your tricks that I saw in the video. You have,
yeah. For those who've come to this cold, I
yeah,
put together a course based using Elise's techniques. You've come to it from an experimental background, and I feel like I'm holding that torch and taking it on into different
yeah.
experimental
It's
backgrounds,
great. You're just single-handedly, like, kind of like
pushing
introducing
it.
the world
Yeah,
to this
yeah,
process. And it's just so wonderful because it's what I totally love sharing
yeah,
is that moment of awe that I had in the very beginning.
yeah,
And that, like, whoa, what? I can put this texture. And with encaustic painting, it's all about, you go end to end with the painting, and you paint over the whole thing, and you layer, 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 and you build, build, build.
mm-hmm.
And with printmaking, you do the same thing, but you do it very differently. You don't have to go all the way end to end on the substrate, and you're working with negative and positive space, and you're
Yeah,
working with layered etched lines and layered lines that are in the wax, and all of those things come together, and you're working with the piece of paper and the background on the paper, so I just love the dynamic of the interaction of all the options that you have with printmaking, that
yeah,
that sometimes it can be a little bit limiting with the other thing because you're bogged down by this fusing and having to fuse every layer and all of that. And here it's like we just kind of throw away the the fusing a little,
yeah.
and we just say, oh no, we don't want it to be flat and smooth. We want it to be
Yeah.
luscious and exploiting those textures.
And coming to it from a calligraphy background, I was building plates but using acrylic based paste and gels and molding paste and tile adhesive, and that's what I was doing when I found your product or found Wax Collagraphy. And as someone like myself who is incredibly impatient, I want to print it now. I can. And that is a joy, the fact that I can make a plate, play around with the plate, and print it within the hour. I'm not hanging around waiting for things to dry or to change my mind or whatever. Well, I can just go and get into that kind of zone where you're just making and making and making.
Exactly. And also the other thing that's wonderful too is one time I was presenting at the International Encaustic Conference many years ago, and I had my prints on display, and someone said, "Why are you using wax? Why not just use acrylic medium?" And I thought, well, because that's a permanent thing. So if you want to put some gel acrylic medium on a plate, don't expect to be able to remove it. It is there, and once it dries, it is there. The wax gives you the ability to make the plate, and then if you're not satisfied with it, you can scrape it off and you could put it back into the can if it's not contaminated with ink. The other thing is that you can, say you get 10, 20 prints out of one plate. And you're like, oh, this is all crushed down. Well, I can't use this. No, you can.
Is that a new one?
It's from 2022, and it's from my Marking Time series.
Yes.
This is when I came into finding some of these beautiful fabrics, and I created these 40 by 30 paintings. One of the results. Now it's going to look very different because it's got a superimposition of an etching on top. But
so you're looking at a 2-layer print.
Yes. So
yeah.
This is a sandblasted pattern.
Nice.
Of particle collision. And then in the background is the collagraph.
Yeah.
And it started with a singular layer of just a background color of a very light blue. And then I went over it with kind of a reddish, and you see kind of a little bit of yellow, and I combined colors on there. So you can also combine colors if they're compatible.
Rich patterning layer with what I would call that a key plate. The black on top, it kind of like acts as a contrast, and it's a dark, and it ties it all together.
And it just kind of working with that superimposition is something I've always enjoyed. And these up here in the background are one plate, they're two different plates that are 8 by 30. And one has a collagraph that is, they both have collagraphs on them. And I just work together with them on the background plate. I more typically in my classes, to streamline it, I just say, you can put a color on the background and do a monotype. And general mark making, with Q-tips or mark making tools, and then work with the clearness of the plate to see how the collagraph is going to show up on your monotype.
Yeah, it's a lovely way to get that to get that contrast. On the course, I've been introducing plates that give the darks. So you're building up from dark to light, because I've been playing around for the last few years with silk aquatint, where you have a silk base and you build up with products, acrylic products that go lighter and lighter and lighter, and the wax will do that, and that's lovely. So you can start off. I've got a little guy here.
Right.
Yeah, so you can start off. So that's starting off from what would be a dark base. That's fabric. I'm using fabric. That will hold the ink. This is book cover fabric, and that will hold the ink, and then all the lights, the textures, or the wax on top of the fabric. So it's one run through the press.
Is that fabric or is that Kozo paper or something?
This is Evelon. This is what we get here. It's called Evelon Soft. It's about 78 grams. It's lovely. I'm really enjoying it. You can get Avalon AP or PA something, which is a more papery Avalon.
Okay.
And we can get a thicker one. The thicker one we get is about 135 grams. It's the same product. It has the same registration mark, but the factory there's different products coming out of America and Europe. So
very interesting.
Cool. Really interesting.
Well,
but I'm really enjoying it. Is Avalon the same as in Costiflex?
Yes, it's a company called Avalon, and the only way I could get the big sizes here, like the 30 by 40, was to go directly to Avalon, and I got an 80-inch wide roll of it that I had.
I'm buying this on it's about a 3-foot roll by 10 yards. So that's how I'm buying this. And I'm really enjoying it. I'm really
it's so strong. I mean, you don't have any sticking.
You don't have any issues with anything, and it's a delight. But that's how I'm getting those darks. I put a section on the course about how to get darks on your plate. You know, obviously, you know, you and I, you can scratch into your Perspex plate, so you're going to get some black lines going on. But I've introduced things like using carborundum, but underneath the wax rather than on top, and that's quite nice.
Yes.
Just playing around. So I took the mantle, I took the torch, and I thought, okay, what can I do? So I think it's about 5 or 6 different types of plate. You know, like using wood, using just cardboard as well as using plastics. So I've got one here using wood, which gives you a different starting point. Obviously, a Perspex is going to give you a light starting point. So I'm trying to kind of do starting points. But as you say, you can always put you can put your print back through the press and have a dark plate, a monotype or a carborundum or any type of dark plate can be dropped down as a key plate on top. And that's exciting. You know, that's really interesting. Let's get through some of these questions. Lynn Kirkland's asked, what is the optimum length of time to leave your plate to harden? Is there a time? I don't wait.
The thing that makes the most difference is just making sure that you don't have any exposed burrs, like from making lines in the wax, and clearing the channels is what I call it. You know,
that's nice way of thinking
make
about
sure
it.
your channels are clear so that the ink can be received. I can't even believe I did it in a day in London, but I did. And that's a good example of how long we waited for them to cool, because I did my demonstration and that was about 90 minutes. And then you guys I just said, okay, gotta just be very spontaneous and don't worry about the outcome. Just kind of make some marks and play. And everybody was printing by the afternoon. So I don't think anybody left their plate sitting for more than, 45 minutes, really.
I recommend people look at it that way. You know, really looking along it so that you can see if there's any hills or valleys, because something very high is just going to get stuck on the press. It's going to cause you problems.
But yes, I always say, look at it from here.
Look at it on the plane.
And it is remarkable to see how very little, a little bit goes a long way, like a good eye cream. That's what I've always said about this product, is like very little. But when you do have too much texture or you build it up too much, you can always use your loop tool to scrape it down a little bit. This is one that I did on the clay board recently, and
you got some high spots there.
Yes. But it made a pretty decent print. This one's very thinly applied. It looks chunky, but it's pretty thin, and it made a nice, well, this is a ghost of it, but it made a very nice print. I can look through my book and find it.
I mean, with all etching and with all calligraphy, it doesn't need to be super high. We don't need big, deep troughs. If anything, that can cause you too many problems. So you need somewhere for the ink to get into, and then the press's job is to pull it out. But I always find with not just with this method, but with all my calligraphy plates, if ever I'm going to get any issues, it's always on the corners. I think it's because I think any product tends to want to puddle on a corner or an edge. So if I'm going to get any sticking, not with just the wax, but with acrylic products or anything I'm using, I always find it's these little corners that are a little snib higher than everything else. If you've got a
Yes.
uniform height, then you're good to go. But it's when you've got a little high bit and then it goes down, and that bit can just hold on to the paper a
Right,
little
right,
bit too long.
And it's always, if you want to run a proof without inking it,
That's a good idea.
which I customarily do when
Yeah,
I'm teaching at different ateliers around the country,
yeah,
is I just take a piece of newsprint
yeah,
and run an existing plate that I already made through it. And then I just look at where it embossed and if there's any sticking. And that's for two reasons, mainly to see, that it's going to print well, and the other thing is to kind of understand the press I'm working with. So I can't stress enough how, all presses are different, and you have to just adjust them towards, for through feel and through running a proof through on a
yeah,
piece of newsprint too. And what you're looking for is just that embossment on the back of
yeah.
the paper that shows that it did print and things are high enough.
Lynn again also asked, how do you clean your plates?
So I'll tell the story of my Tasmanian devil. I went through the whole process. I demonstrated, and then I demonstrated how to clean your plate in between if you want to change colors. If you stay with the same general color pattern, tone, no need. But if you want to completely change the palette, then yes, you need to clean your plate in between. So I went over and I stressed that, you use cold water, and we have this liquid called Dawn
I think
liquid.
it's like washing up liquid, maybe.
2 parts to 5 parts
Okay.
of the Dawn liquid. It's a blue liquid,
Yeah.
and it cuts grease. They've used
I think in the UK we just call it washing up liquid, I think.
okay, yeah, something
Yeah.
like that, and it was used when there have been oil spills and stuff to
Mhm.
to
Uh-huh. Yeah. To
save
deter.
save
Yeah.
the wildlife. Um, and so water down this, and this is good for your surface top.
Okay.
And you can also just squirt a little bit. And this is good for your surface top too. These are wonderful. They have this nylon, and then they have
Ah, okay. Yeah.
and this is particularly good for the brush cleaning.
Yeah. 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 That's
Yeah.
nice.
So I would get one of these.
Brushes. Okay. So
Um,
soapy water, sprays and brushes is pushing pretty much all you need.
yes, and cold water.
Yes.
Cold water.
Yeah.
So Tasmanian Devil came in with this brush, and it was full of wax. And he was very upset that his plate got all melted. And I said, "Well, did you clean it with hot water?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Well, that is what hot water does when you clean it with hot water." So um, the cold water is very, very important.
It is important.
Because it is what
I made the mistake. It's worth mentioning. I clean one plate with. I've always got isopropyl alcohol in the studio for cleaning up things. I like it. It's great for cleaning gel plates and things. But I cleaned a wax plate with it, and it wasn't immediately obvious. But I was a bit suspicious. He cleaned it up really well. I mean, like, wow, it was like, wow, this is clean. Then I Googled it, and it's a no. It would soften it. So the
Mhm.
isopropyl alcohol is a no.
Yeah,
It's not an obvious softening, but
yeah.
I lost it. I did it with one of these. It was this one. So that was it before I'd done the isopropyl alcohol. This was it afterwards, and like here,
Oh, yeah, okay.
it had just everything had just gone. I'd only printed it once.
Yeah.
Everything went a little bit soft.
Oftentimes people will ask, how do I, uh, in my Mexico retreat, which everyone should sign up for, um, when everyone's getting ready to go home, I just tell them to wrap these in newsprint or a piece of wax paper. and you can store them in your suitcase just fine. And they travel really well.
Yeah.
And then I get these lovely books to put the prints in to
Yeah.
travel with too, because if you're traveling with paper,
Yeah,
it's
yeah, to slide them in. That's nice. That's
yeah.
nice. Good. Thank you for that. Joanna Brooks asked about ventilation. The plates. This, I'm interested what your take on it is, because the plates don't take hours to make. My griddle isn't on for hours and hours, and I'm watching the temperature of it all the time. And then as soon as I finish making a plate, it's a quick switch off. So I personally haven't had any ventilation issues, but it'd be interesting to know what you talk about in terms of ventilation.
I set it up in my shop here, my print shop, and I have a window here.
Yeah.
And I have a double fan that I put in there, and then I open the door, and ventilation is important. I
Yeah,
can't
yeah,
say
yeah, yeah. I always say well ventilated area. Say a window open and a through
yeah.
draft.
You want airflow.
Someone I know, and I can't remember their name. They like one of those like joss sticks. Then they can see. Then they can see the air. Because it leaves smoke. If you did light a joss stick, is the smoke going out through a window? Because if that's going out through a window, then you have a well ventilated space. And that's quite
Right,
a
right.
useful way of thinking about it. But I find I've got my griddle on the time it takes to make a plate. So I mean, 15, 20 minutes. And I
Yeah.
think we owe it to ourselves and our health to be aware of those things. And I think if anyone is nervous about or has particular chest issues, but there's no reason why you couldn't set it all up outside. If it's a nice day, a table outside, run a cable for your griddle. With encaustic painting, you're sitting in that room with all those colors going for a long time. You then need your vent system. You need that heavy duty ventilation.
Yeah, this was completely created out of experimentation
Yeah.
after I guess at that point I was teaching encaustic painting for about 15 years. And it dawned on me, I thought, wow, one product.
It's product light. It's one product. There's no varnishes. There's all these things that printmakers would often have to use that we don't have to use. It's a one hit wonder, a one product. But you do
Yeah,
need the griddle. You do need the electricity. You do need to heat
right.
it. You do need to thermometer
And
to
you
make
need an
sure.
etch a press. That's been a
And then
very
you've got your press thing. It's a whole new thing. So there's these two, and I found putting the course together, what I did was I spent days making all the plates, and then I put all the wax stuff away and spent days printing all these plates.
right. Well,
Because
that's something I
that
really
that kept the mess down. I wasn't
Mhm.
jumping from one table to another. I literally
Right.
just put all the wax stuff away and then printed.
When you're learning it, when you're being introduced to this for the first time, you're learning two different things, two completely
Yeah, yeah,
radically different mediums.
yeah,
Using
yeah, yeah, yeah.
wax, it
No,
happens to be
definitely.
white, it happens to be an encaustic paint,
Yeah,
it technically, but it's made differently so that it can withstand the pressure of a
yeah,
press.
yeah.
Um, so
Yeah,
that's the
it's
issue.
yeah. I mean, I did a blog post recently about wax and how there's so many. I do encaustic collage. I do wax calligraphy. I do cold wax painting. The only common denominator in any of that is the wax.
Hmm.
Everything else is completely different. You,
Hmm.
you can't associate cold wax painting with encaustic painting. They're completely different. The
Yeah.
only common thing is the wax. And what my analogy was, flour. All right, you get flour in pancakes, you get flour in pastry, you get flour
Mhm.
in cake, but all those products are really different. The
Yeah, and
common
they taste
denominator
different,
is the
right?
flour. And so our common denominator is the wax, and the product you've made is specifically for printmaking with wax.
One thing that I really loved about developing this is that the wax is a means to an end. It's not the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just part of a very important part of the process. But then it's like done. It's one can of wax. It's a one and done thing. You have your hot plate. You have a very compact setup. You have a very compact packaging for it. It's made for printmakers so that you just put it on the hot griddle. It's very conducive to working minimally.
Coming from a printmaking background, which I have, that's where I've come from this, from making
Yes.
holograph plates using 20 different products on one plate and having to wait for each one to dry. This is like, yeah, wow, off,
Yeah,
go,
it's pretty
one.
instant. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Yeah. Catherine asks, what would be your 3 essential tools? That's interesting. So I've narrowed it down to 5 things. Catherine's asking whether you've got 3 essentials.
My loop tool.
Loop tools. Yeah.
To get things flat. Although I've gotten accustomed so much to the thickness on the plate now, I rarely use the loop tool unless I want to just take the wax completely off of the plate, which this is handy for.
Yeah.
This is my number 1 essential. I love this tool. I've been telling people about this. And what it's wonderful for is that when you etch through your wax and you're wanting to get it ready for inking, because that's all you're doing when you're making a collagraph, you're getting it ready for the ink to go in there. And then I love this. I got this at a garage sale. And so these are some of my essential. I love this thing.
Yeah.
I have the electric ones like you do as well. So those are the hand tools that I find essential for encaustic, and of course the hot plate. And then the other tool that I love is the stencil brush for applying the ink. These are very firm and they really get the job done. They're made for science.
They're great. I use those all the time, have done for a long time. And when I'm teaching, if I'm teaching outreach teaching, I also, kids' toothbrushes are great too, you know. Just stubby guys, little stubby guys that can just get
something that's just going to get the ink in there. I love my stencil brushes.
Are there any other inks you can use? And could you use a crown filled or a safe wash or any other oil-based inks, or would you avoid those completely?
I got these, and I didn't get this. Well, no, they are the safe wash. I use these.
Yeah.
I have used them. The wiping is a bear, I have to say. Very stiff. Right.
I personally, and I'm recommending people on the course to avoid using oil-based because going to start to the temp, it could. Would you say it would start to soften the wax a little?
Yes, yeah, that's mainly a part of the problem, and of course, initially the big problem is that it sticks to the paper.
Yeah.
So
and it's that thickness. It's not quite the right consistency. I've always with using Caligo had to loosen it a little just to get it, to go into a heavily textured plate. There's other inks out there that are oil-based that will be water miscible. They'll be easy clean, but they still contain the oils that are going to soften the wax. I just think it's just a question of being. But as with all of these things, try what you have, because you might be surprised.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
Definitely. Barbara's asked about, and I asked using plexiglass plates. I know that you certainly with your large ones, they need to be a good thickness, because otherwise they're just going to bend and things are going to start cracking off, like the ones you just showed us, the big 30 inches ones. On the course, I've been using a thinner one so that people don't have to sand down the corners or think about the placement on the press, because they're so thin. They're like 1.5, 2 millimeters thick. So if you're using a thicker plexiglass plate, how do you prepare it?
I usually just bevel the edges. And if it's very thick, like I've done up to 1/4 inch thick, then I just prepare jigs for it so that it doesn't move and so that it doesn't
get pushed along with the press.
Yeah. So the pushing is a problem with as you said in your video, they will push away from the paper if they're too thick. And so I have these jigs that I set up, which are basically, I take some strips of mat board and tape them together so that they're the same height of the plate. and I put it on either side and then here, or you could take one thick piece of board and create a jig that it drops into.
Yeah,
Like
I've done it. I've cut holes in perspex like that, and I've used perspex so that I can clean it. That's quite handy. So just it mustn't be obviously higher than your plate, or you're not going to print your plate, but the same height or a little lower than your plate. Just keeps everything in the right place.
Keeps everything even, and then
it means your roller's not having to. It's the jumping of the roller, really. Barbara also asked. Oh, she did your painting with fire course. Barbara told
Hi,
her.
Barbara.
She does a lot of my courses. She's absolutely fabulous. And she did your painting with fire course. She said you recommend that you can add the Aqua base to get translucency. She was a little nervous about how much Aqua transparent base you could apply or add to it. Is there a maximum amount of transparent base you can add to a color before you lose before it's does it affect the drying time? She was mostly.
I mean, if you want to, if you want to get ghostly effects with your colors and really have them be these sheer thin colors, then you can put very little pigment into the transparent base, and you can really, I don't think there's a limit with it.
The drying time isn't affected. It's not a different product. It's what the Aqua is made of. What substrates? Sally Saunders was asking about. What substrates, other things you could think of? On the course, I use perspex and wood and fabric and card and a dry point card, because you can tear away and get some blacks. Any other substrates you've experimented with, Elise?
Tetra Pak. Duralar. So this is I ordered some large clay boards. I just recently did a video of printing this. Here is that, and it's 18 by 36.
Yeah.
And I'm still experimenting with it. It's not, I'm just having fun, really.
Yeah. I've used the clay board. I haven't used it on the course, but I have used clay board. It's nice. It's beautifully absorbent. It's quite, it holds the ink, holds the wax beautifully.
So this is one of my rare, like, corner to corner plates.
Yeah.
Where you put wax all over the plate and then carve into it. And I will use sections of this plate and tape it off and just print a section of it on a full piece of paper. This is a 1/4 inch thick.
Wow, that is thick. It's about 5 millimeters at least. Yeah.
And this is using the different tools, and these are heavy, and so they're in my
looking at that large one. You've used a lot of your janting. Marcy asked about the advantages and disadvantages of using a wooden handle janting tool and an electric janting tool. I personally felt it was down, if you're working large, if you've got an electric one, it's going to stay warmer for longer as you travel across the plate. But obviously, if you're working small, there's no benefit one way or the other. It's about scale.
If you're working large, it's good to have the electric, but just it's awkward too because you're coordinating the wire, and if you're wanting to make straight lines, I have like a piece of steel strip that I just put down on the piece and cruise along to make straight lines. But and just make sure you have extension cords and be conscious of the weight distribution of the tool and its temperature regulator, and it's a lot of little obstacles with the electric versus this one. I've really become fine, like enamored with.
And they're so readily available, those ones.
Just have to make sure you hold it up. Because this will drag on your plate, and you don't want.
I also experimented with some little brass fine liners that are designed for ink. but because they're brass, they were happy in the hot wax.
Right.
But you don't, because they're little tiny guys, you don't get far before it either either hardens and cools,
I
or
was
it's
I was
empty.
gifted one, and all I've done is look at it.
You really don't go very far. Yeah. So
It's just
it's fine for small plates, but they're so you've got about a teaspoon of wax.
Ukrainian egg.
Yeah, the Ukrainian egg ones you can get as well, but they're so you got a teaspoon of wax. It's not going to go more than 2 or 3 inches, and it's done. It's done. It's done.
Right.
But then what I liked about them is the fact, especially if you're using a smaller tin on your griddle, it's not filling up your tin of wax with a tool. They're little skinny guys.
Right.
So,
right.
so they're kind of, if you're working in a confined space and you're making small plates, then they work fine. They work fine. And again, like the larger chanting tools, they're readily available. They're cheap. Sirocco, what kind of fabrics or objects for impressing into your plates, into the wax, work best? And is there anything you should avoid?
Well, I used to tell people to use produce bags back in the day. These mesh plastic. Avoid any kind of plastics whatsoever, nylon like brushes or plastics or anything like that. The best use for any kind of metal objects that you're going to try to impress into the wax is to make sure the wax is hot and the object is not. And because that can be very tricky and messy.
Yes, that's really interesting. And think, what are your favorite ones? I've seen some of your fabrics that you use and laces you use.
Yeah, I like anything that's, kind of a netting that represents the surface of water or earth, something that you can push around pretty easily, not, lightweight. Mostly lightweight knitted fabrics are my very favorites.
Mm-hmm. Do you ever make your own fabrics? Do you ever crochet anything, or
No.
Just the thought, if anyone was into textiles,
Yeah.
they might make their own, and then that's quite authentic. You're making
Oh,
your own
that's cool.
patterns.
Yeah.
That could be cool.
Yeah.
I don't
I
do
would
it.
hunt for them. Mustard papers like bark paper or anything like that. Those can, you would think they can work, but they kind of leave a little bit of a mess behind.
I tried it. I had some. I'll show you. I got really excited by this.
Oh yes,
okay. From my local art store. And I embedded it in the wax. I got really excited, and it just kind of dissolved into the wax. Wanted to stay.
On the Mexico retreat one year, one of the students went and bought the entire inventory at the art supply store in Mexico of that stuff, thinking, "Oh, this is going to be great." I have to keep my fabric separate from my encaustic practice.
Yes, definitely. And I think it's the same with a lot of the tools we're using with this. They are just for wax. It's a separate box. Keep it all for wax. Same with my stencils. I've got a pile of stencils or bits of stencils that I've cut up that go into a box that's just for wax. Because if I now start to use those for something else, it flakes off, it cracks off, and you end up in all sorts of problems. So that's fine. How many prints do you get from one of your plates on average?
Yes, on average, I would say, I'm teaching so much sometimes that I'll just make a one-off of one plate. But if I'm working on an edition, I have an edition that's hanging up here that's mounted on panel. And it's from one of the plates that I made in 2016. And I think I counted 21 prints from that. And now when I look at the plate, I see, oh, I love this plate, but I'm going to have to build it up again to
just beginning to go a little
series.
bit.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't make editions, so, or if I do, I maybe do 5 or 10. You just want to move on. So I hadn't actually, with all the plates that I've made over the years, I'd never actually got to a stage with any of them. I'd only ever done about 10. So I'd never got to a stage where I thought, oh, this is getting a little soft. I'm losing the detail. So I hadn't got to that stage. I hadn't even thought about how many you would get. I think 20 is a respectable number. I think 20 is fine. And obviously, I
Yeah,
think it must depend on how much pressure you're whacking through that press. How hard you're wiping it, how heavy-handed
right.
you are with your wiping. So
Exactly. Yeah,
it's a
because
movable feast.
yes,
Um,
yeah, you can over wipe
yeah,
and then you
yeah,
can't get the detail out of it. Plates from 20 years ago. And you can pull them out and go, oh, I'm just going to build up this surface again over here. And oh, look, now I have this new texture that I've been using in the past couple of years that I didn't know about all that time ago. And you can integrate it back in and create another edition entirely. So there's so much that you can,
yeah,
it
yeah. I
just
mean, it's
never
it's it's
ends.
we're using media here that is ancient. It's alchemy.
Mhm.
They've dug up wax and honey from Pompeii, and they're perfect, exactly the same as the day they were covered. It doesn't change. It doesn't shift. It doesn't go off. It doesn't go brittle. It is as it is. And
Mhm.
so that means, as you say, with our plates, we can rework that. Yeah,
But the beautiful thing about the wax too is that preservative nature of it that you were referring to,
yeah,
the ancient, like it's just this, it's heavily preserved over time, where if you leave your brush in it for 5, 10 years, you heat that up and you pull the brush out, and it's like you just got a foot, the foot therapy that people get where you dip
yeah.
your feet in the wax and they're just soft and luscious and like new. Very much so with the brushes. So if you ever needed to clean your brush, it's quite simple. But there's no need, and it will just sit there in the wax for forever.
Yeah.
Some tips, if you want it to melt down faster. Okay, I think there was a question, how long does it take to melt?
Oh
And
yes,
I
I
think
think there was.
it
Yeah,
takes about 45 minutes, depending on your hot plate. And
yeah,
if you take, when you first get the product and you take the lid off and you just loosen it and kind of let it sit there, it will heat down much quicker if it's covered.
oh, I suppose the heat's being contained.
Yeah. And then
Yes.
also if I like your idea of dividing it up into different cans, because then you won't have to wait so long for it to heat
Yeah,
up.
yeah,
Also, a little bit of it heats up very quickly.
yeah. I decanted it into three smaller cans. You'll see them on the course. So I was using it in smaller cans, but I was just fascinated to see how much I used.
Yeah.
I tried not to waste any, but I used a third of a can. So I got, and each of those. So if each of my 9 plates is going to do 20 prints, that's a lot of prints for a very
Mhm.
small amount of wax, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
That's yeah,
It's a very, very good value for
yeah,
what you get.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's just the shipping. We don't have any control on that one. Okay,
Right.
Elise, did you have anything else?
Um, if anyone wanted to learn more, I'm teaching a class in Connecticut for those in the States, coming up in October. And then, of course, I have this annual printmaking retreat I do in Mexico.
Yeah,
So all are welcome
fabulous.
to look into those
Yeah.
things. And what else? I think.
Yeah, I've got no plans to teach it in person as we speak. Um, and if you can join in on one of Elise's courses, then they're fabulous. The joy of the pair of us is we both teach very differently, so you're going to get a completely different experience just by using. But it's the same with any media, isn't it?
Yeah.
Any media out there, everyone's going to teach it differently, approach it differently, and so there's a huge, and then everybody who plays with this and prints with this, you're going to invent different ways of working, and that's the joy of it, really.
Absolutely.
Absolute
I
joy of it.
plan to eventually have another Zoom class someday,
Oh, yeah,
probably after I have two solo shows coming up, so I'm a little bit busy. And then this product is launching into the global hemisphere, which thank you very much.
yeah. No, it's been it's been
For
it's been a ball. And thank you. I've played with this for a long time. We've been chatting for years. I came to London and we did it. But
yeah, it's
yeah,
really awesome. I mean, the way
yeah,
it all developed. I had no idea I had such an interest in in the UK, and it really didn't come until during COVID but I'd been teaching this for many, many years up until then. And then it just has been great to see it growing and gaining some momentum and traction.
Excellent, Elise. Lovely to catch up with you. Give my
Yes.
love to Gabe and everybody else out there in your team. And yeah, let's get printing. I took a tin to Spain recently, and at the airport he asked what it was because it's in my suitcase, and I said it's a candle, and he said there's no wick. I said, really? I'm going to take it back.